Bharadwaj, Secretary General FISME, and Dr. Saibal Paul, Associate Director Sadhan. I request Mr. Anil Bharadwaj, Dr. Saibal Paul, along with Dr. Gursharan Dhanjal to kindly join us on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Anil Bharadwaj is Secretary General Federation of Indian Small and Medium Enterprises, FISME. He has been an accomplished professional in the field of private sector development and trade issues for 20 years. After spending 7 years in international trade in the private sector, moved to head India's largest federation of MSME'S, acquiring expertise in improving framework conditions for businesses and entrepreneurs and designing industrial and trade promotion policies. Mr. Anil Bharadwaj, we welcome you. At the same time, we have Dr. Saibal Paul with us, a Packet Foundation Fellow and an experienced professional with a demonstrated history of working in the financial services industry for 2 decades in India and Africa. Dr. Saibal Paul is Associate Director, Sadhan. He is skilled in industry analysis, product development, and building up convergences between different forces to address the issues, policy research, and advocacy. He is a strong business development professional with a PhD focused in social finance. Sir, आपका भी हम बहुत-बहुत स्वागत करते हैं. Thank you so much for joining. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have Dr. Gursharan Dhanjal, Vice Chairman, SKOCH Group, a prolific writer, author, and mentor. He leads research projects, impact assessments, and field studies in the areas of governance, MSMEs, women empowerment, entitlements, tribal development, financial inclusion, and so on. Given his expertise, he is invited by the Government of India to sit on various committees. He also heads the SKOCH Center of Excellence on Tribal Affairs, and his books are catalogued in the Library of Congress, amongst others. Now I request Dhanjal sir to kindly begin the session, sir.
Thank you so much. When it comes to the MSMEs, it always makes a very interesting discussion. There are always 2 sides to the coin. A, it makes interesting, and B also, it makes it very, very depressing. Interesting because there are always things which are on the upswing, and depressing because we are always demanding that this is not happening and this needs to be done. So this has been a fight ever since India attained independence. Coming to talk about the MSME sector, it's the largest contributor to India's GDP. A lesser known fact, a largest employer of 110 million people. Another interesting fact, last year it contributed 45% to India's exports. And yet, most of it is unorganized. During the Amrit Kal, we say that this is a sector which is going to be leading the growth to India 2047, when India will become a developed economy, $30 trillion. What is going to be the size? But do we mean to say that given the current circumstances, this fight is going to continue? There's a big question mark. The indicators that have come from the budget announcements, 20,000 odd crores that have been allocated for MSMEs to make India Atmanirbhar. This is something which has been happening world over for several decades. This Atmanirbhar story has caught steam in India only now. But doesn't it mean to say that India always have been talking in terms of Atmanirbharta? The answer is yes. But that was more concentrated in terms of a cottage industry, small handlooms industry, but not in terms really of manufacturing. Come to think of this 20,000 odd crores that has been allocated, looks like a very sound financial plan moving forward. But it needs to be dissected as to what does it mean for the country moving forward. What does it mean for the ailing sector where there is very difficult for everyone to have access to credit. It's very difficult to find institutional mechanism to support the MSMEs in India. So I start the discussion asking my fellow panelist, Mr. Anil Bharadwaj, since he represents the industry, what exactly were the demands before the budget announcements? What do these announcements mean for the country? And post-COVID, the situation that has been transformed, now we are talking Right from the time 1920, during the peak of COVID, Atmanirbhar package was announced. But those remained announcements till date. Now we have another allocation. What does it mean? Where do we go from there?
Thank you, Gurshanji, and thank you, Scotch, for this opportunity. I would also like to put it on record on behalf of MSMEs of India that by far Scotch is the sole institution, think tank in India that has been raising the voice for MSMEs consistently. And I would propose a vote of, or rather a round of applause for Scotch for doing this human service. Coming to the question that you have posed, see, public policy ultimately is a reflection of the challenges of its times. During COVID, certainly, Government of India came forward and it came out with a number of interventions and it has elevated the pain of MSMEs. More or less, the MSMEs are out of it, except certain sectors. So, I mean, as many economists have said, the return to growth has not been, as you would say, the U-shaped, rather it's a K-shaped, like, majority of the sector, of course, moved forward, but certain sectors had a drubbing, and they unfortunately couldn't really come up. So many MSMEs, particularly those who are in the sector, services sector like hotel industry or the tourism industry, as well as those that are in exports, they really, you can say, had the beating and I mean, unfortunately, there is no mechanism available to them for their revival. So whatever bulk of the sector has, of course, rebound, but certain elements have not been able to do. Now, coming to a very important question that what next? And elections are round, and our Prime Minister is also giving signals that, what exactly he has in mind, and he's quite confident for the third term. We also gather that, most likely NDA would be in power. But the question is that what ultimately we need to focus on now. See, whether you take the Manmohan Singh, how much time should I take?
I take 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So if you look at the Manmohan Singh era, even then we had this issue that manufacturing has not been growing, especially its contribution to the GDP remained approximately 15%. They came out with a policy called National Manufacturing Competitiveness Policy, and they also had elements of quality support, IPR support, which would, I would say that more or less like, band-aid for the major issues that manufacturing faced, and we could not make any change for the good. NDA 1 and Modi Part 1 and Modi Part 2 also face the same issue. Manufacturing remains around 15% to GDP, and they have been trying a different route. PLI scheme is one example that they want to revive manufacturing in India. The fact remains that unless manufacturing is revived, is expanded, we would not be able to create high-skilled jobs that are needed. Currently, the situation is really bad in terms of employment, and that remains a big challenge. From the MSME perspective, what I feel is that, and a little bit of background may be needed, that before 1991, a large number of products, approximately 800 odd products under NIC were reserved for the MSME sector, and from 1950 to 1991, they did not face any competition. India was a closed economy. After 1991, we started opening up. By 2002, all quantitative restrictions that were imposed on these products were removed, and they were exposed to global competition. If you take these 800 odd NIC products and convert them into ITC-HS code, they make approximately 3,000 tariff lines. So approximately we are talking about 3,000 products that are manufactured by MSMEs that are facing enormous amount of competition. Unfortunately, their technological base is very poor. There is technological obsolescence, and this remains the major challenge, that how to upgrade technology in a massive scale, the similar technological upgradation that has taken place in China. That's why most of our MSMEs are finding very difficult to compete. When people raised complaints, So government came out with a QCI, quality control orders, basically QCOs, that certain import duties or non-tariff barriers were imposed so that some kind of respite could be given to MSMEs. But this is not a sustainable way. Ultimately, we'll have to go for technological upgradation, and for technological upgradation, we'll have to go for a huge amount of reform in the financial sector so that technological upgradation exercise could be financed. Coming to the last point that you raised, the 20,000 plus budget that has been allocated, it's same, which was there last year, it remains there this year also. How much is allocated for technological upgradation program? Zero. So the point is that ultimately finances that are available, whether they are going to the needs that is of the sector or not. So I know, unfortunately, till today, we do not have a technology upgradation program. There used to be a scheme called capital subsidy scheme for MSMEs that stands withdrawn, and there has not been any approval of, you can say, revival of that scheme. So currently, this is the situation.
Yeah, so in fact, you know, from what I understand, you also talk about technology, you talk about employment, and the fears that these emerging technology is going to bring in, which you also feel that may pose a big challenge to employability, since our workforce may be ready, may not be ready. So I'll come back asking you the same question in the second round. Let me move over to Dr. In terms of access to credit, what really are the hindrances, and how is it that these can be resolved? Because that is something that has been ailing for a very long time.
Thank you very much. So, you know, whenever we see the schemes, all these schemes, they are very good, well-drafted scheme, many good meaning people, they are doing all this stuff. But, you know, we do not understand that how to take it to the last person. So we are talking about MSME, but it should be in MSME. There is a group of these enterprises and everything called nano enterprises. We do not have any idea that how to take finance to them. Microfinance institutions are reaching to around 53 million clients and with around 180,000 crore this rupees, Indian currency. But you know that the gap is huge. And we do not know how to take it forward. In government also, we talk about this micro. It is even beneath micro. It cannot go up to even 1 crore and 5 crore, that bracket. These people need, like, according to some data, it is around, in India, we do have around 11 million nano enterprises. My count is, it is not 11 million, possibly it is 22 million. Because when we are talking about these nano enterprises, an enterprise they are talking about having this from 10 lakhs to your 1 crore. But nano enterprise even less than that. If you see in the field, if you see in the villages, if you see in the slums, if you see in those people, the poor people, we are around 30%, we are poor. Under that bracket, in different means data, it is like 25, 26%, but it may be around 30%. We do not have any idea. And if we are not working for them, the problem, one day it will sink. The social and economical crisis will happen if we are not reaching there. And when you are talking about barriers, the major barrier is your processes and your documents. If you go to these banks, they will ask for paper, they will ask for document, on and above, they will ask for collateral. And these people, they do not have. Most of them, they do not have. Now what to do? The microfinance sector has come in, where we are cheaping, we are doing that one. There also, we do not know the number. SIDBI is doing very good work. They have done this, uploading of the data of these micro enterprises. They are also calling it as micro enterprises. Micro enterprises. So they will try to do that one, but you know they are talking about 2 million, 5 million. By August, they are in this portal, there will be 5 million. But we have so many. So how to deal with that one? We discussed with government for having, to create a special fund for these microfinance institutions. It is yet to do. Government is taking it seriously possibly, but it is yet to the, then there is micro insurance. If you are not talking about micro insurance, it don't, in every segment, we talk about finance, but we don't talk about apt insurance product. We do not have that one. So our industry is also like that. We do have little bit of money to provide, not much, which government should provide us. We don't have credit guarantee. Possibly this in other segment, we do have little bit of credit guarantee. In our segment, there is no credit guarantee. So all these things, there is a kind of, we are moving forward, but devil is in the details. When you are detailing out, then there is a problem.
You talked about SIDBI. So, everyone knows that the contribution that has been made by SIDBI has not been enormous, although the mandate was such. The existing, the subvention scheme, which was offered by SIDBI, that was withdrawn. That has also caused a big dent. So how do we strengthen the existing mechanism in support of MSMEs? SIDBI being one example which has been there and has not really performed, micro and small. They've gone to the medium and the large. And in addition, they've done everything else except supporting the micro and the small enterprises. So how do we strengthen that mechanism?
Yeah, SIDBI is possibly one of the institutions they are supporting, but they do have their own processes. Government needs to think in different way, creating this PPP model institution. Otherwise, what will happen that, the flow of these processes and everything may hinder the things. In SIDBI's case, what has happened that they are really trying to do it. This interest subvention also, it was during COVID they came up with, and then they have removed it. So there is nothing right now. But they're trying to do it, but possibly they have to do a bit more and a little bit faster. When we need support, we need support. Like after 1 month, we do not need that one, then everything is gone. So maybe the response has to be a little bit. But for our segment, SIDBI is one of the institutions, SIDBI, NABARD are one of those institutions which are helping us.
Anilji, let me come back to you. You talked about, most of the policies in terms of MSMEs are done at the central level. So is there any role left for the states, or how do states come into the picture in this?
I'm glad that you asked this question. As a matter of fact, the states have a very important role to play for development of MSMEs. It is rather unfortunate that most of the noise is created at the center, but let's face it, the industry exists in the states, and center is a national thing. After all, it's a state where districts are there, and in one district, in one geography, you'll find MSMEs. Recently, we, as FISME, we work at the national level and work on international issues. But recently, we conducted a very detailed study of one district, which is very nearby Delhi, Meerut. And when we did the deep dive, we found that almost 90% of people are employed. Either they are self-employed or people are working with the self-employed. Barely 10% people are working with the corporate sector or in the government. And this template you can find all over India. And out of these 90% people who are self-employed, majority of them are working from home or from areas which are quote-unquote unauthorized, because zonal laws or because of the building laws that were, you can say, enacted during the British era. So as a matter of fact, what happens is that when people are supposedly working from unauthorized areas, they are excluded from the formal financial system. If they approach banks, they would say that you are working from the unauthorized area, so I cannot finance you. Your property is not mortgageable, etc. They are also excluded from the government support programs because they cannot register themselves. So unfortunately, it's a vicious circle for a very large number of enterprises that are creating employment, in fact, bulk of employment in India. So to answer your question, all these laws are within the hands of the state government. They could very well change those laws, the zoning laws, the building bylaws, and allow these enterprises to register themselves, get into the formal frame, have access to finance, have access to support programs that are there. And we found that if state takes approximately 5 or 6 major steps, one of which I just mentioned, because of the paucity of time, I would not have time to go in all of them. If state government takes, straight away the GDP of the district can be doubled within 4 to 5 years. So the point I'm trying to make is the states so far have not really understood that what important role they can play in increasing GDP of the districts, and which, when we can say collected together, could form enhanced GDP of the state.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So, let me go back to what you were talking about. So, do you think the time has come that we need to do an impact assessment of the MSME policies and the institutions that have been supporting MSME development and growth over the last 2-3 decades, and infuse a new thinking to it?
Actually, Dr. Gurshar, I wanted to tell that one, that the time has come to understand, and understand in a detailed way, that whether it worked, whether it didn't work, what are the lacunas, everything. Like, I'm giving you one example. Every district has district information center, right? You go there and see the situation over there. We do not have to reinvent everything. We have all these things, but we are not using it. We are talking about these trainings, all these things. There are a number of ITIs are there, right? Are we using it properly? Possibly no. So, like, not only these schemes, not only everything, our infrastructure, everything need to be assessed properly, needs to be very progressively assessed, not only picking up the faults, but how can we use them properly? I come from a place which is a very small place. It's called Durgapur. It's in West Bengal. When we were growing up, even my brother was growing up, we didn't have any idea what is enterprise. In our school, it's only for job. Our system also, education system, has to be understood whether it is apt for your enterprise promotion or not. It is not possibly. You go to, even in Mudra also, my brother went there for accessing Mudra. They told that, no, sir, it is too much tough for us, this bank branch. So it is somewhere working, somewhere not working. Why is it not working? We do not understand that one. Our institutions, our processes, our establishments, whether it is working or not, we don't have any idea. And the other thing which we, Dr. Gurcharan, I would suggest that, when we are talking about the success of the schemes, we need to understand how many couldn't we unreach. We always give the number. In India, we are so many, all the numbers are very big. But there is also a number which is actually unreached. We do not understand that one. We do not try to understand that one. It may be for political purpose, it may be for different purpose. We do not try to understand. Let us understand that one, that how much we couldn't unreach.
Coming back to the infusion of technology, lack of funds, lack of knowledge, and lack of the drive to imbibe and adopt the newer technologies has been a challenge for majority of MSMEs. Now with new technologies coming in, you are forced to make those kind of investments if you have to remain competitive. With the global headwinds, and the recession, which is kind of looming large all around the world, and our MSMEs being one of the largest exporters, if they are not able to keep pace with where the world is moving, what kind of a threat, what kind of a challenge is it going to pose for the industry?
Well, particularly technologies like that of artificial intelligence and IoT, etc., are posing enormous amount of challenge. As if the challenges were not enough for MSMEs, a new set of challenges have come. So AI, on the positive note, can definitely increase productivity for many segments, can help improve designs, can help in data crunching, can also improve access to finance because AI-based algorithms will be there. And as people are saying that maybe we would have a chance to replace asset-based collateral with information-based collaterals. Let's see. I mean, this is the positive side. The negative
and job losses which are feared along with.
Yeah, and the negative side is, that first of all, there is fear of exclusion because many would not be able, at least in developing countries like India, many MSMEs would not be able to do this transition and enable themselves with tools like AI and IoT. And that poses a challenge for sustaining the jobs also that you mentioned. But there are 2-3 important issues that I would like to flag because you have asked this question. Now, increasingly, Government of India is also supporting that, services could be put on the, on cloud, and all those expensive softwares could be there on the cloud, and MSMEs would be given some hardware so that they can access those tools, whether it is designing tools, whether it is accounting tools, et cetera, et cetera. The major problems they have started facing, those early, people who have tried to make this transition, one is of interoperability. Like suppose I have signed up with you, and tomorrow I want to change it. So I find that his system is not same as your system, so I'm stuck with you. And you can start exploiting me because I'm totally dependent upon you. The other is of the portability. Again, I can, if I want, I should be able to change from one service provider to another service provider, as is happening, for example, in telecom. So interoperability issues, second, the portability issues, and data privacy issues. These three are basically new challenges that MSMEs are likely to face.
What is the way out? So let's see if this really comes up as a big challenge to the MSMEs. So you as an industry body, you as an industry organization, so how is it that you are looking at it, that the sector could be supported?
I think there are two things. One is that, awareness creation. This is the first thing. We should be able to, that's how we intend to do, that to create awareness to as many people as possible, that what are the technologies available, what are the opportunities they will bring, and what are the threats. Secondly, even if they have understood and they are informed, the question is that they would like to upgrade themselves. Now, upgradation of hardware requires funds. So again, it boils down to access to funds. So we need particularly a support of banks and maybe policy support in terms of, whether tax-related benefits, fiscal benefits, so that people can invest. Instead of giving income tax to the government, whether they can invest this amount in upgrading themselves, I think that would be necessary.
You talked about support. So there's an element of equity support to MSMEs. Why has that been such low key? What are the hindrances in this for it to pick up, and how it can be corrected?
So I will tell you from my context. So equity support is there, but you have to also build up the other factors in it. So there is a debt equity ratio. So we should not go for the number, first of all. We always go for the number. We should not go for the number. What do you understand? That whether we have created the right kind of, context to, take those, access those equities? Possibly no. We are yet to. Second of all, we can talk about equity, but when you go to equity, there are such strong parameters, you cannot go into it. There's a big hindrance for our sector that, okay, I do have, in SIDBI, we do have IMEF. So if you try to access that one, these parameters are so tough, it is really very tough to access those things. So we have to make little bit friendly. Yes, it has to be monitored properly. We're not talking about squandering the thing. We have to make it more people-centric approach for this equity and debt, whatever support, financial support you are creating, it has to be more this thing. Eventually, in our segment, what we are seeing that, these public sector banks, they are also reducing their support, whereas the private sector banks, they are coming in bigger way. So what I feel that the parameters, either you support those enterprises to develop their capacity to reach to those parameters, or you make your parameters a little bit human that they can access that one. That's my take on this equity thing. Yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about support, also at the same time, even if you do have given them the credit access and have not really created the absorptive capacity, so ultimately, it's in the interest of many organizations to operate under the radar, wherein they stay away from the prying eyes. And if you do give them the credit support, then they would like to come up. But the point is that do they have the absorptive capacity? Do they have really built in those skills to be able to take it further? So it becomes a chicken and egg story. So how do we fix this? Maybe Anilji, you can shed some light on this.
In the question of equity, I mean, for the benefit of the House, when you start a business, basically there are two ways of raising funds. One is debt, that I come to you, if you are the financial institution, and say this is what I want to do. I have put my 1/3 amount or 1/4 of equity, and based on that I raise debt. This is one way of it. This can bring the organization only to a certain level. But you want to grow fast from micro to small, small to medium especially, and medium to large, I need to have more equity because there is a limit how much debt otherwise I'll have to, I can raise. So there are two ways. Either I go through the private equity route, that I go to a specialized person and they will give me money and I give them seat on the board so that they become my partner. Other way is that I take my enterprise public, SME exchanges. So for that, there are specifically SME exchanges that have been created in India. But unfortunately, they are still non-starters, so to say. They have not become mainstream as yet. And there are two very important reasons. One is that, when you go to public, so first of all, you'll have to expose your chest. And you have to show your books to your people who have invested in your amount. In terms of regulatory compliances also, a lot of, can say, data disclosures that would be required so that people can see what you're doing, where are you spending money. It is not that, you have taken money from the public and you started building your own house, buying your own cars, etc. When it's your own money, people have been doing it. Especially 97% of MSMEs are proprietorship partnership firms. So there is no distinction between the promoter and the owner. It's one and the same, the individual and the promoter. But when it is public, then it's a different story. So one is, yes, you should be ready to expose your chest to the public. And then all your transactions become public. Second very important thing is, which is also very difficult, that India remains a regulatory maze to really wade through. And there are many expenses where you would find it very difficult to put them on the books. You would be surprised that in Germany, it is possible to write that how much bribe you have paid and put it in the balance sheet. But can you do that in India? No, it is not possible. So typically, when you are small and when you are also, you have to deal with the regulatory environment, the kind of one we have in India. So a lot of expenses are there which won't find its reflection in the balance sheet. And you have to do it and find a way to somehow manage through that. So many people, in spite of the fact that they need it, in spite of the fact that the business has opportunity to grow, in spite of the fact that they can raise money from the public, they decide not to go public. And they decide not to raise equity, which in turn make them remain small. In 2018-19, the economic survey came out and coined this word, that Indian MSME sector is strewn with dwarfs. So they refuse to grow, so they remain small because they have not been able to raise equity and based on that more debt on the market. I don't know whether I have answered your question.
Yeah, to an extent, yes. No answers can be complete and final. Okay. So there's always a supplementary to that. In fact, you mentioned something very interesting that, both Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange, they have their SME indexes. And put together in last 5 years, they have nearly about 450 companies, MSMEs, which have been onboarded. And out of that, about 25 odd of them have actually moved to the main board. Meaning to say that out of the entire universe of having performed so well, with the public equity support, not more than 25, which is just about 15%, could move on to the main board, is not really a very good story. So, it looks like not only in terms of the development institutions that we have, which is what Silvi you've been talking about, we need to go back and look into it. We need to do an impact assessment, and then possibly these also need to be reformed. So in addition to the access to credit and the institutional mechanism that exists, however limited it may be, so there is a whole lot of reform that is required in addition to the financial support which the government says is going to be given over the next 1 year. So is there any merit in this argument?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Especially there are two reforms that would be required if we believe Modi ji, and he is saying that the kind of signals that he is giving, that in the third term, he would be going all agog with big reforms. Now, what do we mean by big reforms? The first big reform is, as a matter of fact, opening up of the financial sector. Even now, approximately 75% of the banking and financial sector remains in the hands of the government. So it's PSU banks. So there's not enough competition. And they work as one entity. As a matter of fact, before becoming chairman of the Prime Minister Advisory Council, Bibek Devarai had written that in the world's largest monopoly is PSU banks, as in one entity, because they are reporting to one owner, that is government, and Ministry of Finance, DFS, Department of Financial Services. So actually greater competition is required, where currently it is the ideas that are chasing the capital. And capital is chasing only risk-free businesses. Like, for example, they are ready to invest no matter how much you want, cars or housing. All banks, for example, they have built their balance sheet based on this risk-free, tension-free loans. But how many of them are ready to chase ideas? So the test of the financial sector, the competitive financial sector, is when capital is chasing the ideas. In West, it is the capital that is chasing the ideas and not the other way around.
I have a different story to tell you. That when we are talking about this equity and this, in our case, what is happening, we have seen the very good transition from not-for-profit entities to NBFCs, and these NBFCs have transformed into either going to IPO, then we are there, transforming themselves into banking, like Small Finance Bank and Bandhan. Here, Bandhan is also there. So Bandhan, this kind of institution. So, for us, the ask of equity is so much, and also we are trying to raise this much, and the market is not open for us. There lies the problem. If there is that equity also, it is somehow not coming to us always. So because why, when we are talking about the policies, micro segment has been always coming into a micro segment, and like from 0 to your 10 crores, something like this. But there is a nano segment. We need to come up with the specific policies for them, which is actually, there is nowhere in our policy regime. We need to come up with, in this, especially this nano enterprise, we need special focus for them.
Are you also suggesting that in addition to SIDBI, we need a development bank or a development institution which is focused entirely on MSMEs and nobody else? Because SIDBI's mandate initially was that, but in fact, it has not really happened that way.
Yes, we have suggested government for that one. One specific institution for this smaller segment, nano to small, and then we have also asked government for your proper credit guarantee mechanism for this one. We have also requested government, I just sent it, yesterday only I have sent that one. Before budget we sent another one, we sent it to Principal Secretary of Finance. Then another one we have requested for your specific, your enterprise, specific your insurance. It may be asset insurance, it may be different kind of insurance, both life and non-life insurance. So all these things, and also when you are investing in smaller institution, you need to understand with them with different parameters. The rating agencies, even whatever we have in India, it is very much for the bigger entities. When they go to the smaller entities are lost because they don't have that kind of outreach, they don't have that kind of your technology, they don't have that kind of strong governance, but they're doing well at the end of the day. If we are talking about 11 million nano enterprise, we are also talking about 20 million at least employment. So they have to think in a different way, and it would be wonderful if government come up with a specific bank or financial institution to support this segment. Yep, I agree with him.
Development institution.
Oh yes, surely. See, currently we have Small Industries Development Bank of India, SIDBI, which apparently it looks that it is for the MSMEs, but it does not lend directly to MSMEs. So it is into refinancing business. So it gives money to those banks and those financial institutions, MFIs and so on, which lend to MSMEs. So they require some intermediary so that they can lend to the intermediary, and the intermediary lends to MSMEs. In this process, what happens is, one, that the lending norms are pretty strict of SIDBI. Second, they have a distance, because they charge more money. Like, by the time you get, because the spread, like the kind of money that SIDBI would be getting, maybe at 6 to 7%, but by the time it comes to me as an MSME, it would be 14%, 15%, and so on. So if MFIs or many such institutions, or for example, SIDBI itself is directly lending, the spread could be 3 to 4%, and the MSMEs would be able to get money at 9 to 10%, which has never been the case. It's only rare that you can get access to money from SIDBI at these amounts. So we definitely need, number one. And secondly, we need an institution that has pan-India presence, and it provides all kind of commercial services. Like SIDBI, if you take loan, SIDBI can directly give you loan also if you are taking, for example, loan of 10 crore, 20 crore. But then all the banking services are not available there. If you want to get the transfer of money through them, you would not be able to do. If you want to, you need a bank draft, you would not be able to do. All those commercial banking services that are required, or you want to open up a letter of credit, you would not be able to do. If you want to get foreign exchange remitted in your account, you would not be able to do. So we need a full-fledged commercial bank dedicated to MSMEs, having pan-India presence. If we have 600 plus districts, it should have at least one branch in every district. And that would dramatically transform the access to finance for MSMEs.
In fact, there was one index which was done in association with the SIDBI looking at 2023. It's called Jocat Sampurn Index. It has shown that there has been a slowdown in sales performance of MSME sector. It has contracted in 2023. So how much of it can be attributed to the efforts made by SIDBI itself, or how much it can be attributed to the efforts of Atmanirbhar Bharat? It's a question which remains to be answered. But if it is being reported that it is slowing down, it is not really translating into a good news. So given the current circumstances, when there is a limited technology absorption, they require skill upgradation and enhancement, they require capital infusion and ready access to credit, and it still remains to be seen, over next year or so, how this sector really unfolds, whether we are able to create more jobs, or we are going to be contracting in terms of jobs. 45% performance going to enhance this year and next year under Atmanirbhar Bharat, and how much of the contribution going to be made by the sector towards India becoming a developed country by 2047. So on the go, one quick comment from Saibal, from you, and then from Anilji.
See, one thing that what we require in India is basically very focused approach. It may be geographical focus, because if we come up with a very good policy which is working in the mainland, but it may not work in your northeast. So we have to have a very focused approach whenever we are trying to do something in the policy framework. And it may be geographical, it may be your, like your enterprise or types of enterprise, whatever possible way it has to be developed first. Second of all, we should not always run, political people, they would like to run for this number, but we also need to understand, in a detailed way, why are we not reaching to lot of people. Then the third thing possibly what we have to do about this, we have to, our problem, especially I can talk about my segment, the major problem is very this one ministry is not talking to other ministry. If you want to go to other ministry, then you have to go through a channel. Then these channels are so much. If we can get it unified somewhere, when we are talking about this MSME and policies, why don't we use our existing infrastructure to use this one? If we can send, if we can create a white paper for government on all these and send it to them, possibly there would be some way out. And yeah, in India, a lot of things are happening, but we need to do much more to make it really happen on the ground.
Thank you. Anilji.
I am neither leaning left nor leaning right. I represent MSMEs that are a pragmatic lot. So I look at it very pragmatically. See, when India became independent, we were barely 11 to 12% urbanization was in India. Today, urbanization is approximately 30%. In the next 20 years or so, we are going to have urbanization in the range of 50%. So what is happening? And we are a sweet spot in terms of young population. So a very large number of people, millions and millions of people are migrating from rural areas to cities. When they do, and when they are young, so they would be building new houses. When you build a new houses and you build a new nest, then you require refrigerator, then you require all kind of gadgets that are required, and that fuels economy. So even if we don't do anything, India is definitely going to grow at a fairly good number of 5% plus. If we do it right, and if we don't do hierarchy, then we could increase it to 7%, and we could make this transition of India becoming a medium-sized, earning country in the range of by 2047, as they say, developed country, which means each having a per capita income of $20,000. So if we play our cards right, if we don't do hierarchy or suicide, then we can make it to 7, 8%, 9%, and can perhaps emulate what China could transform within a span of 20, 30 years. But if we do not do it right, even then we will continue to grow at 5% plus.
Well, thank you so much. In fact, that's on the positive note. It's not $20,000, $13,000 plus.
It depends actually. You think
yeah. So it's not really just a tick mark item if you're looking at it in the pragmatic and realistic terms. India over 2030 likely to become a middle income country at the rate at which we are growing. And by 2047, we're going to be a developed country. Yes, it's not a pie on the sky. For the first time in India, we have had a 25-year horizon. We have moved away from 5-year planning to 25-year planning. So this is the very first positive step. And what we are discussing today is a long-term thing. It's not something which is over next 6 months or 8 months or a year going to evaporate. So there's an era of reform over which everybody, all of us, you, us, on the other side, everybody is going through. And the indications are such that we have learned from our past. We are trying to correct those mistakes and trying to reform those areas wherever there is a need, and there's an urgent need for correction. And with what the panel suggests, these two gentlemen, looks like the future is bright. It was never dark, but the brighter side is that it is well within our sight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you were listening Mr. Anil Bharadwaj, Secretary General FISME, and Dr. Saibal Paul, Associate Director Sadhan, in conversation with Dr. Gulsharan Dhanjal, Vice Chairman, SKOCH Group. I request